Hello and welcome to WashingtonExec's video series. I'm your host, Ziadeh, and with me today is Ken Falke. He's a chairman of the Boulder Crest Foundation and best-selling author of Struggle Well, Thriving in the Aftermath of Trauma. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ken.
Thanks, Amanda. It's great to be here.
Of course. So the foundation you chair and the book you authored focused on such important and widespread challenges in our country, especially today. The Boulder Crest Foundation focuses on using post-traumatic growth to heal and train and advocate for combat veterans, and their families who have experienced trauma. And the book, Struggle Well, approaches PTSD and various forms of trauma, helping to understand them and overcome them as well. So Ken, I wanted to ask first if you could tell us a bit about the concept behind Struggle Well and why you felt this book was so important to be written.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So I think I'll go back in time a little bit. So at Boulder Crest Foundation, we have a variety of programs for combat veterans and first responders now. After the Vegas shootings, and we realized how, although I think we've known for a long time how first responders, do have very similar struggles. As a small nonprofit, we weren't able to help them, but with very generous donor has allowed us to bring them into our fold as well. So we run a program, multiple versions of programs, but our flagship program, the thing that really is known here at Boulder Crest, is something called Warrior Path. And PATH stands for Progressive and Alternative Training for Healing Heroes. And the concept of the training part of that is that what we believe is missing in traditional mental health care is this whole concept of teaching people how to live great lives. If you look at traditional mental health care, what they try to solve with medication and talk therapy is symptom reduction, which is really this whole concept of making us feel less bad. Whereas our goal is that just because you're feeling less bad doesn't mean you're not still feeling bad. And with a country that's in the midst of a massive amount of depression and anxiety just with COVID, but prior to that, 125 Americans a day take their own lives, and 23 of those are veterans. So suicide in our country is a big problem, and just by feeling less bad doesn't mean that you're going to overcome that ultimate decision to take your own life. We believe the opposite of suicide is living a great life or thriving. So our Warrior Path program was done in partnership with a doctor named Rich Tedeschi, who coined this term post-traumatic growth. And although he coined it in 1995, the concept and the definition of post-traumatic growth has been around since biblical times. I mean, if you think of the man himself, Jesus, I mean, his life was about strong trauma and struggles and overcoming them, and that nothing that was good came easy, and that was the concept of post-traumatic growth. In our modern day history, the two places where you can really point your fingers at large populations of people who achieve post-traumatic growth in their lives are Holocaust survivors and prisoners of war from the Vietnam War. And those were two models that we looked at and were really intrigued by. Because I guess if you were to compare trauma, which we try never to do because everybody handles it differently, those are pretty substantial problems, right? I mean, if you're in a Holocaust situation, you're a prisoner of war for 6, 7, 8 years in a small prison cell. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that. So we looked at those and we said, okay, what can we learn from those two stories, and what can we teach people about living a great life? And that's really what happened with our Warrior Path program. And about 4 years ago, we put an NFL football player, a friend of mine was friends with a former NFL football player who was struggling. And we offered a seat in one of our programs to him. We weren't sure how it was going to go. He was a civilian. He never served in the military. He was in a program with 5 other big tough military guys, and it went really well. Then we started getting asked, well, if it went well for him, do you think it would work well for civilians? And that's really what led us to write this book, because we have a small nonprofit, and really what we're trying to do is reach a lot of people, and one way you can do that is by publishing a book, and that's really what we did. So Struggle Well is a book based on the science of what we do in Warrior Path, and then it also weaves my personal story and my co-author's personal story, Josh Goldberg's personal story, throughout the book.
Yeah, as a combat veteran yourself, what does it mean to transform struggle into strength and growth, and how will readers learn to do so in the book?
Well, if you think about just military service in general, I always tell people the first phase of post-traumatic growth in our journey is basic training, is boot camp. Um, we in the military recruit people off the streets that we don't know. We had nothing about them other than what we learned during security investigations and things, but we know nothing for the most part about them. Bring them in. We take everything away from them, shave their heads, give them a whole new wardrobe. And in a relatively short period of time, depending on the service, somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks, a relatively short period of time, we transform men and women into some pretty remarkable soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines. And that's where that whole concept of growth and thriving through trauma, occurs. And for your listeners, which I know in the GovCon sector, there's a lot of former military folks. But for those who haven't been, I'm sure you've watched a movie about military boot camp, whether it was Full Metal Jacket or something else. But it's not easy. It's tough, and we put a lot of pressure on people. And the ones that make it, they thrive through this growth. So what post-traumatic growth really suggests is simply this: that when times are tough, when trauma has hit us, that you stop, you take the opportunity to learn from that, and then you create a plan to grow through it. Because what really happens in the traditional language that we speak about growth is what some people we refer to as resilience. Now, we don't like that term. Resilience simply suggests this, is that after trauma, you can bounce back, or maybe the bounce back period after trauma is a shorter amount of time. When I think of resilience, the true definition is bounce back. So when you think about fabric, if I pull it, it bounces back, it goes back to where it was. We don't want it to shrink. We don't want it to grow. What we want in our lives, though, is to learn from these instances and to become a better version of ourselves. And that's what post-traumatic growth suggests, is that, and how do we do that? And, if you read the book, obviously you'll see the recipe, but that's really what post-traumatic growth is about.
Yeah, and what do you hope readers do take away from your book and continue to do after they read?
Well, that's the great part of this whole story, is that, life is a journey. We believe that everybody, no matter who you are in life, you're going to live what we refer to as the sine wave, a series of ups and downs throughout your life. And getting all these practices in place, we call them wellness practices, which is the ability to self-regulate, getting a network of people around you that you can turn to when times get tough. Most of us will never need a therapist. Most of us will just need a good friend in life. But understanding that formula will set you up for a long, long period of time, and just always working on it, because every day, you open the door and life slaps you in the face. I mean, you never know what's going to come, right? I mean, I recently had somebody, I was having a great day, and somebody decided that, the back of my car should fit in the front of their car. So, it's like, you just never know what's going to happen. And then this stuff causes problems and causes stress in our lives. It doesn't mean you have a mental illness. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's just that things happen, and we need to be most prepared, as the book will teach you, on how to get through them.
All right, absolutely. And the book is available and can be purchased and read right now. So thank you so much for joining me today, and really appreciate your time and your insights about Struggle Well.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. Have a great day.
You too.